Cloud adoption is ramping up, but prevention-based security isn't enough for the hybrid attack surface. That's why Gartner predicts that 60% of enterprise security budgets will go towards detection and response in 2020. ExtraHop Reveal X Cloud delivers cloud-native network detection and response for the hybrid enterprise, the only SaaS-based NDR solution for AWS. Request a 30-day free trial of Reveal X Cloud at extrahop.com/trial. That's extrahop.com/trial. Keep your company and products relevant, competitive, and reliable by standardizing your security framework to protect intellectual property, become a reliable business partner, and guard financial and customer information. Standards Connect is an online standards management solution from ANSI. It's standards access simplified. Standards Connect is a cost-saving, fully customizable solution for entrepreneurs and companies that spend $2,000 or more per year on standards and want to translate spend into a subscription model, want to simplify access, search, monitoring, and collaboration, or need a centralized hub of standards for multiple users at one or more locations. Get a free trial at securityweekly.com/ANSI. That's /ANSI.
Welcome back again to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Paul Asadorian and Jason Albuquerque. Register for our last webcast of the year with Core Security by going to securityweekly.com. Click the webcast dropdown and select registration. If you've missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, you can find them in our on-demand library by selecting On Demand from that same webcast drop-down. If you attend any of our webcasts, you will receive 1 CPE credit per webcast. Also, mark your calendars for our Security Weekly Holiday Extravaganza. On December 19th, yes, I will be in studio, and we will be recording or live streaming 5 one-hour panel discussions with some of the most knowledgeable professionals in the industry. To round out the evening, Ed Scotus will be joining the Security Weekly host to give his annual announcement about the CounterHack Holiday Hack Challenge.
We're going to record those too, right? Not just
yes,
stream
we
them?
are going to record them. Yes, we're going to live stream and record.
Okay.
Yes, we're going to use them at least once more. You can view the live stream on our YouTube channel or by visiting securityweekly.com/live. We hope to see you there. All right, let's get into some articles. A couple interesting ones this week. This first one talks about changing the way we think about cybersecurity leadership. And, you know, we talk a lot on this show about the need to have a strategic relationship in the organization from a cybersecurity perspective. Jason, we've talked a lot about this with you and your role as both the CIO and the CISO. Curious on some of your thoughts on this article. I thought they brought up some really good points here on for some ways for us to rethink cybersecurity in an organization.
Yeah, no, agreed. It was a good article. It definitely outlined some of the current state that I see with a lot of our customers, right? I mean, in some instances, cybersecurity is still looked at as a back office type job, right? IT operations and embedded in IT operations. Leaders aren't put in a strategic level where they can influence the rest of the business units or influence leaders across the business. And, this article really goes through different mindsets that I think, C-level executives and CEOs of companies need to go through to kind of raise the bar, right? Raise the bar of how cyber leaders are positioned and really define the why, right? That's a big piece that I took out of this too, is that as an organization, you have to define why your cybersecurity experts and, your risk management experts are here in the company and what they're protecting and what their mission is for the organization.
Yeah, I thought the one that was really interesting is this concept of finding the right leader, right, with the right needs. A lot of us think about the CISO needing to be technical, but we've seen that trend go away over time, right? They might have come out of the CIO group potentially at one time and had the technical skills, but that's not as important these days as more of that strategic communication, business alignment kind of person. That doesn't necessarily mean you need a technical CISO in some of these organizations.
No, agreed, right? And it's kind of that, I look at it as that maturity model that many C-level positions have gone through, right? We saw it with the CIO. 25 years ago, the CIO was in many cases underneath the finance department because they were a reporting arm, right? And they worked underneath a CFO, and they weren't a strategic leader. And they spent many years fighting for that position at the table, that seat at the table to be strategic. And they had to let go of some of those technical skills to do that, because then themselves needed to be able to influence the business. They needed to be an evangelist for IT, and in our cases, security, really making high level enterprise management decisions.
Have you guys seen this though, where the C-level position, whatever it could be, oftentimes I've seen it as the CISO is really just a figurehead, so that the company can claim that we take security seriously, right? We have a CISO, but that person doesn't have any influence or power or reporting structure to other senior level leaders that allow you to be effective at implementing any type of security for the organization. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah,
too?
I think that's some of the downfall of what we're seeing in some instances today, right? Is that they bring a CISO on board because they know they have to, but they're not empowering that role to have the impact that it should have, right? And that's where some organizations are getting in trouble, right? Because
and I think some turnover, right, is happening in that CISO role that we've seen, largely because you maybe don't realize it until you're 6 months into the job that you're just a figurehead, right? And so people leave. Agreed. And I respect the people that leave that realize that, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you're walking in the door and you're not empowered to embed security across the entire business, if you're not empowered to have influence with your fellow leaders across the organization, if you don't have that, I think we mentioned this on a couple of shows too, if you don't have that conduit upstream to, the CEO, or the board of directors, and have that ability to really have strategic conversations with them, you're not an empowered CISO, right? So yes, I totally respect folks who realize that they're put in a position where they're not going to be able to empower the business, not going to be able to enable that level of collaboration across all the business units and influence across the business units, that they get up and they move on to the next organization that's going to support security and really put security at the forefront and make them a strategic business unit.
I think there's some good things for people out looking for a CISO role that they can also use as part of their interview process. Is cybersecurity a strategic part of the organization? Are they serious about cybersecurity? Will you have the influence by being positioned correctly in the organization to be successful? What are the expectations from a communication, breaking down some of those barriers? I think those are really good things for CISOs also to be able to look at the organization and say, if you're not serious about these three things, then maybe this isn't the right role for me either, or you're not the right, obviously the right organization for this, for me. Just because if they believe that they need to be in that type of position and the organization's not going to give them that opportunity, then obviously there's not a good fit there.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And I mean, the article goes into that, right? Number one, positioning of that cybersecurity leader, the location within the organization is a big piece. Having the authority to actually make change and influence, but how the leadership of the organization, the CEO, the board of directors, incentivize the rest of the organization is a big piece of it too, right? Is security supported from the top down? Right? Is security going to be allowed to be an influencer across the business and not operate in a vacuum?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Some good lessons there for both organizations and CISOs alike. Second article, we talk a lot of innovation. This is a study on, what does it take to do it right? And there are there's a lot in this list, by the way. I'm not going to cover all of them, but I thought there were a couple that were really interesting. One is focus, right? What are, by having and honing your focus in specific areas, innovation activities can be more successful, right? Because you're not just scattering across the board. So I think one aspect in here was focus. But the second one, which I think is even more important, which is collaborating with key internal players, right? Innovation doesn't happen in a bubble. And if you're going to figure out ways to innovate, you have to understand aspects of the business and key internal stakeholders to really figure out what is it that they do, where are ways we can innovate specific areas. And so those two kind of stuck out right away for me.
Well, I
Yeah,
think,
no, agreed. The collaboration piece stuck out big time for me, right? Because it pointed out some business units that innovation teams should be aligned with, right? Strategy. Obviously, you need buy-in from the strategic arm of the organization if you're going to, make any progress. Corporate venture or capital, right? It's a funding arm. Of course, you're going to want to have, collaboration with the folks who have the purse strings and can provide funding for this. And then the other side was corporate development. M&A teams, right? Because you're going to get to a point where your innovative team or your innovations team is looking at, do I build it or do I buy it?
Right. Yeah, I think, looking at where how your innovation could be aligned with the business and then getting buy-in is really what this article is saying, right? It's just if you're going off and innovating and prototyping and no one wants it, when you come back and say, look at this great thing that I built, then it's going to go nowhere.
Right. Yeah, and you've wasted time, right? It didn't add value to the organization.
Right. And that kind of leads into the third one that I thought was interesting is designing in incentive systems, right? Incentivizing that innovation. And that helps to create success in some of these innovative products is because there's incentives built into it. Obviously, we talked about culture and some of the other things they talk about in this article, but I thought it was interesting in thinking about how to incentivize innovation, which was another key piece. I just think it's a little lower on the list because if you don't get those first couple right, it doesn't matter what incentive system you build, it's still not going to work.
Yeah, no, agreed. Honestly, I think the move beyond culture clashes was a good one too because, fortunately or unfortunately, we live in an instant gratification society and we want what we want it now and we want it fast. But what came out of this article is that, listen, innovation is, they put it in there, it's muscle buildup, right? It's the long haul. One of the things they pointed out was the longer an innovation program survives, the more it shows that it can deliver value, and the more the broader company culture accepts that innovation team, right? So it's not something that can be looked at as instant gratification. It needs to be seen as the marathon versus the sprint.
Yeah, agreed. And then we talk communication. This article was a research project by Microsoft, I believe, in the UK, how small teams are really having issues with internal communication. Again, these are topics we talk about a lot, but it's interesting to see, 29%, almost a third in the survey, were stressed by a lack of organization-wide communication. It's not that difficult in a small to medium business right. to have broader organization-wide communication. Help your employees understand where you're going.
Matt is big on this here, and I think we do it well, right? And it's easier because it's a small team, and maybe because Matt and I personally have worked in larger companies where it's much harder, right? And I think I've seen it work and not work.
But even in some of the biggest companies that I work for, they always did at least a quarterly, corporate organization-wide meeting, kind of gave everybody an update on where things were. We do it monthly.
All hands meetings that we all dreaded when we worked in corporate America.
Well, that's the point. That's the point I was going to say, right? Because you can go through and you can have an all hands meeting, but if you didn't truly communicate, right? If you're not a good communicator, and the team members aren't seeing value about what's being communicated in that all hands meeting, they're going to leave there with still the same mysteries on their plate, right?
Jason, you've been to some of the same all hands meetings I've been to.
Sounds like. It's all about adding value and being transparent at the end of the day. And listen, the teams are going to see right through BS, right? They're going to see through, trying to have conversations and beating around the bush. So, at the end of the day, there's certain things that you just have to be able to communicate, and I think it's more effective if you're communicating transparently with your organization, because you don't want teams going out there and making assumptions, right? You want them to have the ammunition to know what's really happening within the organization and not rely on, people just kind of building their own narrative. You want to define your own narrative as a leader.
I think also how effective all hands meetings have booze. Just saying. Helps.
We do this every month when I come into studio. I am the most transparent guy you'll ever see. We share the numbers every month. We track where we are. Right. It's the opportunity for everybody to know what's going on, raise issues, raise questions. I believe in that transparency because at the end of the day, I'm trying to build trust, and I want us all aligned on where we're going. And in a small business, we're 8. We do it every month. This is not difficult, even in 50, 100, 500 size companies. I know it gets a little harder when you get into the thousands and you've got remote locations, but look at technology. We can use technology to help get that word out. But to your point, Jason, there has to be a level of transparency, openness, honesty that has to happen in order for those meetings to be viewed positively by the rest of the organization. And so that's the other piece that has to happen here.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, we all know what struggle is, right? And if there's struggles or roadblocks that the company's going through, who better to communicate that with, during an all hands meeting? I mean, that's the whole point of an all hands meeting, right? Is to get everybody on the same boat, everybody, rowing toward the same outcome. And what better way to circle the wagons and have all the troops on board than to be just 100% transparent and say, listen, we need everybody's help here.
Or you could send video emails. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that one.
We'll get into that one.
I brought this one in because I figured if Paul had to record a video for all the emails he has to reply to in his inbox, we'd never see Paul again.
I just mount a camera to something, GoPro, whatever, and just record all my emails all the time. So I know what it says. The first one is know when to send a video email. I know when not to send a video email, and that's when you're in the bathroom. Like that would be rule number 1, video emails not allowed.
Yep. Number 2 would be at the end of BSW on a Thursday night.
Wrong time to send a video email.
we can barely talk, let alone recording a video email.
I love you, man. My video email.
All right, so we're recording a bunch after the holiday party, right?
Exactly, right. It'll probably be a thank you message because we'll be thanking all of our fans, and we'll just Anyways, right. I'm just curious. I've never done one of these. The concept of this was interesting, right? Humans are used to talking to each other in person, and emails kind of abstracted that away. But I've never used.
I look at it like this: the article definitely put a light on the fact that we get way too much email, and email sucks.
Yeah,
right. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? I mean, we need a better solution to that. Recording video email messages, I'm not sure is it. I like collaboration portals, like we're doing right now, right? I mean, this gives us the ability to kind of get that face to face, be able to see each other, be able to hear the expressions in our voices, see the expressions on our faces, and interact in a collaborative but a way that we can kind of guide the conversation. I mean, a video email is kind of just static in time. Commercial.
Is it just like sending a YouTube link to someone?
Might be.
Or is there better technology for that?
I don't know. I mean, first of all, if you think about this, you record a video, it's bigger than 25 meg. It's going to get dropped by the email server anyways, right? So I'm out because think about a recording of this. I mean, this is a couple gig, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you can't send it efficiently. So then what do? Do you have a YouTube channel? You point everybody to it? Anyways, I thought it was an interesting concept. I'm just not sure how feasible it is, at least for me and probably for the two of you, because we just have way too much email to get through.
Well, I have considered it for like reaching out in our marketing and communications and sales efforts, right? Because we are largely entertainment, we're in the entertainment space, although in security. So we should be able to send out, videos to people to communicate our messaging to certain audiences. But I think there's still logistical issues with this. Also, there's security concerns. You're encouraging people to click on links and things like that. So, yeah, I think it is interesting to overcome the challenges of email, how we could communicate over video channels rather than email.
That's the key, right? The key is that the article defined a truly major problem, at least in my life. Too much is an email, but I'm not sure that these static video email messages are the key. I think it's more collaboration type portals and that type of thing.
Yeah, kind of like a Google Hangouts or a Zoom, where you can
WebEx,
actually interact.
Microsoft Teams, those type of things. Yeah.
Jason, enterprises are muddled over cloud security responsibilities. Are you surprised?
Yeah. I am not surprised. For me, I looked at this and it's really about ownership, right? who owns the cloud strategy and who owns the security around the cloud strategy. I mean, we're at a point in time where you have data protection officers, privacy officers, CISOs, heads of compliance, and I think we're at a point where no one stepped up to own it, so we're seeing the effects of nobody owning it.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, the CIOs didn't want the cloud, and so we created the shadow IT, but the CIOs didn't own it. Then the security guys caught wind of some of this, but they didn't want to own it either. Now you have this DevOps movement where the development teams can literally spin up cloud infrastructure as part of their delivery pipeline, but they don't officially own it. So, hey, look, I'm not surprised either. I think there's a lot of confusion in the space about what kind of security do I get from my cloud providers, and it depends on the type of cloud service you're getting. And then for those things that are left that are your responsibility, who owns them? Is it one team? Is it multiple teams? So I'm not overly surprised. This is obviously going to be a trend and something for us to continue to track, because as we see more cloud adoption, defining who's going to own some of these different controls to secure these environments will be an interesting one.
And I want to be honest. I mean, for the betterment of the business and the clients of the business, somebody needs to step up and own it, right? And every organization's different, right? Some organizations have privacy officers. Some organizations have data protection officers. Our organization's easy, right? It all falls under my team, right? So there's really one business unit who just naturally, organically has to own it. So we step up to the plate and we own it, right? But I think we're not doing ourselves any favors if everybody's stepping back and nobody's doing anything.
I think owning it is the wrong term. I think it's someone needs to be the leader in this particular space, right? And I think
when I say own, I mean accountable. Somebody needs to be accountable for it.
Sure, and leaders are in fact accountable, right, for themselves and their team. But I think that oftentimes in security, we're called upon to be that leader and that collaborator, right? Which is why we talk about these articles so much that have similar themes and different perspectives on variations of the same theme, right? Because we're often called upon to say, who's going to own cloud security, right? Who's going to lead it, be accountable for it, and collaborate with all of the different teams, right? That goes into legal, that goes into ops, that goes into network, that goes into development, to make sure that we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's from a security perspective. That oftentimes falls on the security group largely, that I think we are called upon to be leaders more often than not.
Yeah, and we have to do a good job of knowing who's accountable or responsible or is a stakeholder in what piece of that cloud strategy, right? Because you're going to be dealing with multiple stakeholders across the business depending on what type of technology or platform you're talking about.
It's that accountability without necessarily a whole lot of control, right? Or
Correct.
Influence, potentially.
That's true. Potentially, especially in a DevOps world.
In some instances.
It could be very hard to control, but somebody has to be accountable for making sure that security is part of that environment. So it was an interesting article. I think we all know it instinctively because we probably deal with it a lot. You, Jason, a lot more than us. In that combined CIO, CISO role, probably a lot easier in your environment. But when you've got various groups that could be dealing with cloud, articulating who's responsible for what is going to be key.
Yeah, and it's you mentioned it may be a lot easier, but we still run into those instances where business units are going out there on their own, quote unquote, rogue, right? So we have to be the ones to kind of reel that in and grab some control over it and say, wait a minute, hold on, let's do this in a collaborative fashion, right? As soon as we're finding out that there may be parts of the organization going out there looking at cloud platforms that we didn't even know about.
Yep, agreed. Last article. Here is all your conferences for 2020, at least the important ones that this article lays out. I thought this is a good summary. We're going to talk about the CISO, but they talk about the CIO, they talk about the cloud folks. So if you're interested as an executive on where are the kind of the biggest events that you should attend for the year, this article does a really good job of kind of summarizing, here they are, here's the dates, and here's where they are. We know most of these on the security side. I have not been to Suits and Spooks in DC before, so that's probably the one new one for me that I wasn't aware of.
That was a new one for me too. Yeah, and actually, I clicked on the link to see what it was all about, and it was pretty interesting. So I may dig a little bit deeper.
I like the recommendation for CISOs to go to DEF CON. I think to have that, do that one community conference a year, to have it be DEF CON, because you have access to such a wide variety of different researchers and activities that really can connect you to the community, right? You think about all the different villages at DEF CON, all the different talks and events that happen that are really researcher and security community focused. I thought that was a good recommendation. Of course, you could do that without attending the big one, right? There's a million other more community focused conferences, B-sides in particular, right, that you could attend as well. But I thought that was a good recommendation to at least one, not to be the RSA, Black Hat, Gartner, Forrester, Global CISO Executive Summit. Of course, that's where I believe you should put your focus when you're at the CISO level, but have that one or two, right, that you do throughout the year that keep you connected with the community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, as someone who attends those, it's extremely beneficial as a leader to be able to connect with the community and really understand what's happening out there. Incredible amount of benefit of going.
Yeah, and I think Suits and Spooks is going to be a very interesting public-private balance. So if you're doing stuff in that, if you're doing stuff with the federal government or some of these other entities, that's probably a really good one to kind of get that kind of both sides of that security discussion, because, the public side brings in some different stuff that the private side doesn't, and vice versa. So, anybody that's dealing in kind of that multidisciplinary, that might be a really good show. DEF CON, you're going to get a ton of information, and then the rest, we all know them because we're all there. So we'll see you there. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you at RSA for sure, I'm sure, but we'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.